Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 1 o'clock. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for our Community Health webinar this month. Our topic this month is success stories and sustainability planning, and our own Whitney Nordvold will be presenting. She's the Great Plains Good Health and Wellness Program program coordinator. Let's see, before we get started, please just make sure that you are muted so there's no interruptions, and towards the end of the presentation, please check your chat box, as I will be putting in an evaluation link for you to fill out. So please don't sign off until you fill one of those out. And we will get started. So success stories can document program improvement over time and demonstrate the value of program activities. When presented effectively, success stories can be a useful tool for educating your stakeholders and the outcomes of your work, the results you are achieving, and attract new funders. During this webinar, we will discuss the anatomy of a success story and share a variety of ways your story can be told. And I will hand it over to Whitney.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I have my baby here with me, so I apologize if I have to stop for a second and pass her off or something, but hopefully she will cooperate. It is National Breastfeeding Awareness Week, and I want you to know that I'm breastfeeding right now, so how cool is that? Okay, success stories and planning. Everyone understand what a success story is. Why are they important to tell? What are the characteristics of a success story, and some different ways that you can develop and tell your story. So the first things first is we want to define what a success story, movement in your program's progress over time, its value, and its impact. More important, and potential funders. With attention to detail, it can become a powerful instrument to spread the word about your community, financial sustainability, but the success story doesn't just promote, like I said, volunteers or your programs get support from stakeholders, community leaders, policymakers, those kinds of things. Somebody who prepared success story can easily demonstrate that funds are well spent. So this is like a success story that we provide to CDC to make the target population aware of your program. We'll be looking at some we'll be looking at program newsletters, and then we'll have a chance to community newsletter as well that will show kind of some verbiage that's used to educate a community about what a program or project is doing. To show movement in the program, progress when planned outcomes will not be, I'm sorry. To show movement in the program. There's something else that made it in there, I apologize. To mobilize resources to help your program get needed resources. So creating partnerships when you're mobilizing resources and providing funding to local programs, or providing support to other programs. And then as far as getting future funding, or maybe it's human capital that you're looking to receive for your program or project. That's another resource you could recruit. One thing that's really important about a success story is the fact that it puts a face to the numbers. So a lot of times funders or policymakers, they're having, is everything okay, Shannon? Okay. You looked worried for a second there. Okay. Sorry. It puts a face to the numbers. So like policymakers and funders, oftentimes they're just looking at applications. They're looking at words on a page. And if you can creatively and effectively tell your story, you can really show a funder or a potential partner or a policymaker what these dollars are doing rather than just what they're reading. They can what does it really mean when you report that you have provided X amount of services to Y amount of people? How are the lives of the participants and the community members changed as a result of this? I mean, we can tell somebody, oh, we set out to help 50 people, we helped 50 people, that's a success. Well, what does it mean that we helped 50 people? And that's what the success story does. The success story tells it animates the data so that it has an opportunity. When are success stories all the way to the end and after the program has ended? Early in the program. At this point, you want to verify the program description, highlight any partnerships, document policy changes as a result of the program, and describe potential participants. So the success at this point is that you are up and running and that you're moving and that you intend to make things happen. There's usually a lot of excitement and momentum at this point, so take advantage of that. Take advantage of your staff and your partners being excited about the beginning and establishment of the project. Implementation phase. With your program up and running, you want partners to know about your progress. You haven't achieved the long-range outcomes yet, but you should have some promising stories and examples of early changes. You should be able to exemplify some of the minor things that are changing, whether it's an attitude or maybe you just recruited your first group of participants or something like that. It might not be extravagant changes that you can look back on and see big strides, but there are some really awesome stories that can come from this. People's lives touched, those kinds of things. Later in the game, you should have demonstrated impacts that you want to convey to your stakeholders. Your success story should illustrate how things have changed for people that your program serves. You should have obvious success stories to tell at this point. So setting yourself up for successful storytelling. Successful success storytelling. Say that 10 times fast. Working with programs or organizations, and from the very beginning, make sure that somebody is responsible for the success story. Somebody is responsible for collecting all the data and getting it into one place so that the story can be told. Have a clear work plan and evaluation plan that you refer to often. So, for example, with the Great Plains Good Health and Wellness Program, you look at later. It should be constantly and making sure that you're still working toward those goals. And then the evaluation plan should work with that. Is those big things that you're going to be telling the story about once your program or it's completed, and you're looking to continue to different organizations. I don't think you can have two and make sure you write their answers down. And if you're passionate and you care about what you're doing, you'll have lots of good questions to ask. On those two things, taking pictures and videos and getting quotes from community members or participants or stakeholders, it's really important to make sure that you cover your bases and know that you have permission to share their information or their images with the rest of the world. There would be nothing worse than having a really exciting success story finding that you don't have a media release for somebody and you have to start all over, or you without. So just make sure that you have your bases covered there. Taking notes at events or classes or courses. If you have a patient and one of your participants has an aha moment, or maybe you're teaching, maybe you're working in the garden with some children and you have, you notice something really fun and exciting that's happening in their hearts and minds. Take notes after participants. Everybody in the office or all of your partners can write in or share in. And then keep regular and accurate records. This is really important for evaluation purposes, and it's really important for reporting and being responsible as a program or a project. But it's also really important because whenever you're writing your success story, you don't want to say, we helped 50 people when really you helped 120, but you just didn't take accurate enough records. And so you don't want to sell yourself short, and you don't want to you don't want to give the wrong information whenever you're providing your story to community members or to funders or stakeholders. So some things to keep in mind. These are other ways to set yourself up for successful storytelling. So this is when you're actually like getting ready to sit down and write the story. Keep in mind, who is your audience? Maybe it's a major business industry in your state, policymaker, potential funder, school, a local media source. You're going to write differently for different audiences. You're going to use different verbiage. It depends on what you're trying to do, and that kind of goes into the next question. What is my purpose for sharing the story? Maybe I'm trying to influence change with those local policymakers. Maybe I'm trying to recruit volunteers at the local school. Maybe I'm just trying to inspire change and attract new partners through a local newspaper. And that's all going to affect how you write the story, what kind of story you should be telling. Maybe if you're telling a story, maybe you're trying to, like I said, recruit volunteers at the local school. So you're probably going to use digital media because that's the language of young people today. But if you're trying to influence change or recruit volunteers in other ways, maybe you're going to put it in a local newspaper, and that's going to look a little bit differently because that's how older people, policymakers, are going to get their information. And like I said, double check your facts and your media releases before you release anything. And while you're writing, because you don't want to share information about somebody specific and not be able and have to change it later. So yeah, and then we'll move on to the next slide. How can you tell your story? Oh, count the ways. There are so many ways you can tell your story. The most traditional way to tell a story is just a simple one-pager. That's an example of one here. This format can be used through all stages and can be used as a starting point for other methods of success sharing. So maybe you make a goal to just start with the one-pager, but this can kind of be your outline or your basis of other ways to tell the story. Maybe you're going to tell the same story, but you're just going to tell it different ways. This is something that can be shared easily and get straight to the point. It should have representative images and often features a direct quote from program staff, volunteers, or participants. So this is just an example of one. And in a minute, after I've described some of the other ways that we can tell a story, I will also share. One of these close up, so you'll be able to see it a little bit better. So how are some other ways you can tell your story? Some other ways you can tell your story is, like I said, in a newspaper article or a newsletter. During the implementation phase, there are opportunities and reasons to share your stories. You'll want to share progress with stakeholders, recruit partners and participants, and keep them up to date, and plan for longer-term program sustainability. Depending on the audience, you might share via social media, the local newspaper, a program report for a tribal council. These methods are appropriate later in the game as well. So, like I said, newsletter and newspaper article, maybe a verbal story, and something that I read about while I was researching to put this PowerPoint, this webinar together, was called the elevator success story. And you've heard of the elevator speech probably if you've been working in the professional world very long. And the elevator speech is just being able to describe what you do and sell yourself in like 30 seconds. Very succinctly, basic words, something you memorize, something you are able to just spit out without them having to ask a bunch of questions to get the point. It's funny. I need to work on this because my little brother recently asked me, so what exactly do you do? And I started describing my job to him and he just kind of glazed over. So maybe I need to work on my elevator speech. Anyways, the elevator success story is being able to describe, say you are at a conference somewhere and somebody says, hey, for me, for example, Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board, I've heard of them. What do you do there? What does your program do there? And I should be able to spit out a quick success story. This is what we do. This is why we do it. Here's something really awesome that we've done. That's 3 sentences. You should be able to say that easily in 30 seconds. So the elevator success story, this is what we do. This is why we do it. This is something that happened as a result of it. And they'll walk away from that conversation thinking, we do similar work, or we help people like that, or I know somebody who does that kind of work, or I know somebody who could benefit from their project or program. Now I have a clear picture of what they do and I can refer them there. Brochures or handouts, these are really important too because you have them prepared, they're right there, you can pass them out anytime. They have lots of images and not a lot of words, and they just tell the story very briefly and beautifully often. Digital media seems like that seems to be the most popular way to do storytelling, and it's one of the most creative and emotion-evoking ways to tell stories. You can just use a simple slideshow, Powtoon, I'll show you what that is. You can have a video of an interview of one of your participants or your stakeholders. You can do a photo voice project. There are lots of different ways digitally to tell your story. And because a lot of people get their news and they communicate through social media these days, digital media is a really important way to learn to tell your story because you can put it on your Facebook page, you can put it on your website, and it's there forever. You can refer it. You can refer it to anybody. You can send them a video clip. You can put it on YouTube and just send them the link, and it makes for an easy way to share your story. So some basic criteria for success stories is 1, it provides basic background information about the community, area, or region, and it describes the community's need. It describes the program or project's purpose very clearly. It also describes the method or intervention and the intended results clearly. Outcomes are described in a way that is clear and easy to understand. Notice I'm saying clear. And towards the end here, I'll highlight what I mean by clear. Evokes emotion and connects readers to the participants. Like I said earlier, this is really different than like a program report that somebody, the funding for the Good Health and Wellness Program is through CDC. Funders see reports all the time, but the difference between a report and a success story is they share the same information, but the success story is put together in a way that allows the person reading it to connect with the community. It allows them to understand, oh, yes, that's what these numbers mean for this community. That's what these dollars mean for this community. It includes only pertinent information. So you don't need to add in things unless you're trying to create imagery. You don't need to add in things that aren't pertinent to clearly describing the method and the intervention, things that aren't specifically, describing the program or aren't specifically talking about the community or the area. When I say clearly, I mean avoids acronyms or jargon. So maybe you are running a program that we have one program in the Good Health and Wellness program that has a mobile screening unit. And so since many of the people who work in this project are on a medical team, they kind of speak their own language, just like we here in program management speak a certain language. And if I'm speaking to, say, a potential volunteer, or I'm speaking to a policymaker who doesn't really work in community health but still influences community health, I want them to have really easily be able to understand what it is that I'm trying to convey to them. So avoid acronyms and jargon, and include your contact information. Make sure that whatever method you're using to tell the story includes a way to get a hold of you so that they can follow up with you if they want more information or want to refer somebody to you or those kinds of things. Okay, I am going to show you guys some examples of some success stories here. So let me get out of here, and I'm going to find, let's see, the first one I want to show you guys is, so this is just a really simple slideshow. This is a YouTube video. Well, sure, if you want to. She's probably nice and happy and full now. So we will look at, this is the Seven Oaks Community Garden Project, and this is 3 minutes. Sorry, my phone is
share your screen again, Whit.
Oh, yep. Thank you. Okay. Hold on 1 second here. Where am I? Here it is. Okay. So I'm just going to play this, and this is a really simple example of what your story can look like. Hopefully you're all still awake after that music. But this is a really very simple way to tell the story. And YouTube is accessible to anybody who has internet, so you could just shoot them the link. And one thing that I think is really important to notice if you watch the video carefully, there are so many partners that they didn't just provide funding, but they provided items or volunteered their time. And that's one thing about sustainability, is it doesn't always mean writing another grant. Sustainability can be recruiting resources from right within your community. It can mean, and by resources I mean professionals with expertise in your area who are willing to volunteer. Banks too, because banks have a legal obligation to invest time and money in their local communities. So don't hesitate to reach out to organizations or businesses that don't necessarily have anything, like what they do doesn't directly influence what it is that your project does or your program does. But try to think outside the box when you're thinking about sustainability and who to share these success stories with. And then here is an example of a Powtoon. And this is not an example of a success story. It's just an example of a Powtoon, so you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that. And you can add your own images also, and do voiceover too. So that's a super simple example, and when I was looking at it, let's see, there is a Powtoons app, and you can record voiceover, upload media, and share it via your cell phone. So a lot of us access social media and those kinds of things using our phones, or it's just we have a microphone right here, and we have a camera and a video camera right here on our phone. So you can take those things from your phone, and if you have a Powtoon account, then you can put them directly onto your Powtoon account, and you have access to them without having to figure out, okay, so I took pictures on my phone, how am I supposed to get it onto Powtoon? So I would really recommend looking into that. And for our sub-awardees, that's something that we'd like to help you create your own success story, so your own. Hesitate to reach out to me or Shannon or Jennifer to get that process started if you're interested in it. My computer's telling me to stop sharing that screen, so I'll close that one. And here's another example. I will reshare now. That is not what I want. Why isn't it giving me that as an option? Oh, here we go. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so here's an example of Tokati Youth Center over at the Crow Creek Sioux Tribe. There are Good Health and Wellness sub-awardee there. And this is just an example of their one-pager success story. We put this success story together based on information that they reported during the last fiscal year. And this is part of our evaluation report for CDC. And by the way, which also reminds me, we are in the process of separating these out. So over the next couple weeks, we will be sending you copies of your success stories. For some reason, if they made it out to you guys, we don't have record of it, and we apologize if you have not received them. So we will be sending you one-pager success stories. So you'll have you know, some stuff to refer to whenever you're creating this year's success story. But as you can see here, it just has kind of a basic quick rundown, talks about the basic goal of this project, shares a short paragraph success story, and then the program director has a quote here. Talks about a couple of the other very short successes. It talks about some of the goals that they have, and then here is an image of the youth that they work with harvesting sage from their program garden. So those are just that's just an example of a one-pager. Like we talked about, this being one of the kind of the baseline of your other success stories, so you can use this as inspiration to tell other success stories, or tell the same success story in other ways. What else? Oh yes, and I wanted to pull up a newsletter. So a newsletter informs lots of people, and it does it in several different ways. And this is an example of the GP Pitch, which is another program that from the past here at the Health Board. And this is an example of their newsletter, their monthly newsletter. And it had just kind of a little review of like what's happening with each of the tribes and the communities that this project served. And then Lower Brule, for example, they took this update and they just kind of edited it and they put it in their local community monthly newsletter so that the community had access to this. This was kind of more for stakeholders and partners. And then Lower Brule used it to inform their entire community about the work that we were doing as the Community Wellness Coalition. When I say we, I mean me and the people there, because I worked for that program before I had this position. So anyways, that's a couple ways that you can tell the story in the middle. You're not at the very beginning, but you can use this kind of method to introduce what you're doing as well. And then the last thing I have is I wanted to share some tools with you guys that can make success story telling easier. So one example is CDC has a website that shares recent community health success stories. So you can use these as inspiration, as templates or kind of references whenever you're putting yours together. And there's a whole host of them here. There's a whole library of them here to refer to. And then another CDC tool is, it's kind of an application sort of, and it's called Success Stories Made Easier. Okay, here it is. And I'm just going to play this short video. It's just a minute, and it describes what this tool does, and it's free. Anybody has access to it.
I love this application. It's a really easy tool to use, and it gives us a way to ensure a consistent message, and it provides proper assistance for people who haven't done this before. People really are excited about using this tool.
you're making a difference in the health of your community. Sharing your story will help garner support from important stakeholders and build on your success. But you don't have a lot of time or resources, so how do you get from here to here? The DCH Success Stories application asks a series of questions to break down your story into manageable pieces and provides quick tips and writing samples that are just a flick away.
I love the step-by-step model of this application. It's prescriptive and detailed and really guides you through the process. It's a tool that we can use to really explain what we do, why we do it, and how it's effective. We love success stories. It's one of my favorite tools.
You have a choice of professionally designed templates and royalty-free photos to create polished documents without incurring the time or expense of a designer.
CCH Success Stories is a way to highlight community level interventions and also a way to document our work. We were really thankful that we were given a tool to use to tailor our stories to showcase the benefits of our programs, so we didn't have to start from scratch.
With the click of a mouse, you can make multiple versions and tailor your story for different audiences. Let's get started.
Okay, so that just kind of describes this tool, and I can have Shannon include my slideshow whenever she sends out the follow-up for this, so that you guys will have access to those too. And then there's just the Powtoon website, so that you can go and check that out. That's totally free. I think you can pay for, Shannon, can't you like pay for upgrades or like other like different packages that you can pay for if you want to?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have a media toolkit that has I think it has like a template, a success story template in it too. So if that's something you're interested in, and that has a whole host of other media related information in it. So if you would like one of like a PDF of that, you can reach out to us and we can get that to you. So that's really kind of all I have today. I hope that you guys have a better understanding of what a success story is. I think that a lot of times people have kind of a one-track mind when they're thinking about success stories, but there's really a whole host of ways that they can be used. So does anybody have any questions for me before we wrap up here? I must have did such a good job that like just everybody got all the information they need.
Yeah, thank you, Whitney. Also, if you don't have a microphone on your computer and you have a question, you can type it in the chat box and we can ask Whitney.
Or if you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself and just ask that way too.
Correct. Otherwise, I just put the evaluation link into the chat box before signing off. If you would fill that out, we would much appreciate it. I also wanted to add that our 4th annual Good Health and Community Wellness Symposium is coming up at the end of this month. It's on August 28th and 29th. It's here in Rapid City. I'm also going to put the registration link for that in the chat box. If you're interested, it is free. There's no registration fee, so sign up if you want to come. Other than that, if no one else has questions, Whitney can stay on the line for a little bit longer if anyone has questions, but otherwise, thank you all for joining us and have a great day.